SEP Fanfic Readings presents Finding Hermione by ebookdragon. Chapter 15, A Convention of Weasels, November 24th. Draco apparated with Hermione and Rose to the Burrow for the dreaded Convention of Weasels, as he started calling it, much to Hermione's annoyance. Harry and Ginny were going to be there as well to act as moral support and to try to keep things as civil as possible. He didn't know how well that was going to work. Ginny was still livid about Weasley's attempted kidnapping. Draco picked up Rose when they landed outside the wards. She was clutching her green stuffed dragon in one hand and had the other on the collar of his jacket. He took Hermione's hand and they walked up the hill to the front door of the Burrow. "Ready to do battle?" he asked. A garden gnome went running across the lawn in front of them. "Not really. I'm so tired of all this," Hermione answered. "I know. I wish this was going better for you and the girls. Why couldn't Weasley be reasonable about this?" He knocked on the door of the Burrow. Mrs. Weasley opened the door. "Hermione, dear, you didn't have to knock. Let me get a hug from my beautiful grandchild." Draco transferred Rose into his grandmother's outstretched arms. "Oh, you've gotten so big." Mrs. Weasley hugged Hermione, then Draco as they came through the door. He was still getting used to the easy affection that Mrs. Weasley doled out. "Good afternoon, Molly," Draco said, returning her hug. He took their jackets from Hermione and hung them on the hook. He'd remembered to wear long sleeves today. He didn't want the mark to agitate Weasley and further complicate the proceedings and add more stress on Hermione. He watched Rose go hug her grandfather as they walked into the living room. Harry and Ginny came out of the kitchen. Draco caught a look of fury from Ginny before she quickly masked it behind a happy smile for Rose. Rose ran to them for hugs. Ron and Lavender came out of the kitchen behind Harry and Ginny. Rose saw them and broke away from Ginny and ran to hide behind him and Hermione. "Don't I get a hug too, Rose?" Weasley called after her. "No!" Rose shouted from behind their legs. Draco petted her head soothingly. This wasn't starting off so well. "Rose, honey, come hug your daddy. He's missed you." Molly tried cajoling the girl from her hiding spot. Weasley was getting redder and redder as Rose continued to refuse to hug him and cling to Draco and Hermione's legs. "No, not my daddy. Draco's my daddy," Rose shouted. It was one of the best moments of his life. This sweet angel claimed him as her father, and he had a difficult time keeping the elation from his face. The fact that she did it to Weasley's face probably would have been a good moment, too, if he weren't so worried about being avotted on the spot. "Daddy, don't make me hug him. He might take me away again." She said it loud enough the whole room heard. Silence descended on the room. "Again? What have you done, Ron?" Molly yelled. Ron paled at the sight of his mother's fury. "Mum, she's... "Don't you dare say it, Ronald Weasley!" Ginny shouted, forestalling Weasley's attacking Hermione and keeping him from calling her a Death Eater's whore again. "Maybe Rose would like to go play with Albus. I take it you brought him, Ginny," Draco said. This argument looked like it was going to devolve fast, and Rose had already seen enough of her parents arguing. "Oh, yes, he's out back playing with... Well, I'm sure it will be all right. Come along, Rose, let's find Albus." Rose looked at Hermione. "Go on, honey. It's okay. Mummy and Daddy need to have a talk." Ginny led Rose outside. Rose kept herself as far from her father as possible as Ginny led her from the room. "I see you brought the Death Eater and convinced my daughter to start calling him Daddy," Weasley spat as the door closed behind Ginny. "I see you brought the Homewrecker, and what she calls Draco is none of your damn business," Hermione retorted. "Stop it, both of you. Ron, what was she talking about? Why was she afraid to hug you?" Molly asked. "I took Rose out of school one day last month. I didn't tell Hermione," he answered his mother. "They're turning my daughter against me," Weasley whined, obviously hoping his mummy was going to take his side on this. "We don't have to do that, Weasley. You're doing a great job of that all on your own," Draco sneered at him. "Why are you even here?" Weasley asked. "Where she goes, I go, so get used to it. Especially since the only reason she's even here is because you weren't able to obliviate her the last time you thought she was alone." Oops, he wasn't supposed to say that. Sorry, not sorry. "Obliviate her? You tried to obliviate her!" Molly screeched. "It worked before! Oh, shit!" Weasley paled as 3 wands were drawn and pointed at him. "Mutatio Scullis!" Draco shouted at Weasley. Weasley's head transformed into a red-haired weasel. He'd secretly wanted to do that for years. Childish, yes, but oh so therapeutic. "Furnunculus!" Harry shouted at his best friend. Maybe not so best anymore. Weasley's furry face erupted in boils. Hermione pointed her wand at her Weasley pimply husband and uttered the phrase, Ni Fidir Kadim Kalai, with deadly calm. A shudder passed through Weasley, but no other visible sign of whatever Hermione hit him with showed. Draco looked at Hermione. She grinned up at him with a malicious glint in her eyes. Whatever that spell was, Weasley wasn't going to like it when he figured out what the effects were. She took his hand and breezed past Weasley and Lavender into the kitchen. Hermione seated herself on the bench at the kitchen table. Draco slid in beside her. Weasley sat down across from Hermione and glared at her through his beady weasel eyes. The effect was rather amusing. Ginny walked into the kitchen. "Oh, you started the hexing portion of the day without me? No worries, I'll catch up." Ginny's famous bat bogey hex was soon visible on her brother's face. He almost sympathized with the bastard, having been on the receiving end of that hex. Almost. Well, not really at all. The bastard deserved worse. Molly, Arthur, Ginny, Harry, and Lavender stood around the kitchen. Molly appeared to be working herself up into a tirade. Arthur was trying to soothe her and keep her temper from erupting. "I don't know what Hermione hit you with, but I'm not even going to try to fix it. They can unhex you. Ronald Weasley, I don't know who you are anymore. You cheat on your wife for years. You have children with this woman." Molly spat, gesturing at Lavender, who looked at the floor. "You obliviate your wife to keep her compliant. You kidnap your child." "She's my daughter. I can't kidnap my own daughter," Weasley said to his mother. "You can if her mother doesn't know where she is," Molly shouted. "Let's not forget he called her a whore, in front of Rose," Ginny added, shooting a glare at her brother. "You called her a whore. You called the mother of your children a whore. You called her a whore in front of your daughter. I raised you better than this. Calling her a whore, that's a bit hypocritical, don't you think, considering your actions?" Molly raged, beating him about the head. Weasley flinched and tried dodging her assault, throwing his arms over his head. "At least I'm not hopping into bed with a Death Eater," Weasley stated mulishly once his mother stopped beating him. "The war is over, Ron. It's been over for 15 years, Hermione said. She squeezed Draco's hand under the table. "That's easy for you to say. They didn't kill anyone in your family. They killed Fred," Weasley said. "Draco didn't kill Fred. He lied for us at the manor. His mother is the only reason Harry is still alive. The only reason we didn't lose the whole bloody war is because of the actions of these two people. I lost my parents. They may not be dead, but they don't know me, so they might as well be. They were all I had. You lost a brother, and that sucks, but I lost everything. You were supposed to be my husband, yet you cheated on me throughout our marriage. You betrayed me. You abused me. Yes, abused me. That's what forcibly taking someone's memories away to hide your wrongdoing is. Then you tried to tell me just to live with your infidelity because I don't have anyone else. I deserve better than you. I deserve to be happy. I deserve someone who will love me no matter what." Molly looked like she wanted to start beating on her son again. Arthur was having a hard time restraining his wife, who was so apoplectic with rage that speech had failed her. "The question now, Ron," Hermione continued, "is how much do you want to be a part of your daughter's lives? I'm not going to try to keep them away from you, though your actions are making that decision very difficult for me. There are some things I'm not going to put up with. We will behave civilly with one another while the children are present. That means you and your mistress won't be talking bad about Draco or me in front of our daughters. That means you will prevent your other children from bullying our daughters. That means you won't tell our daughters that you're taking them away from Draco and me. That means you will not do anything that may endanger the lives of our daughters. Yes, I know all about Minerva's flying lesson. You should count yourself lucky you're alive right now. If you step out of line, I will do everything in my power to keep them from you. I won't have my children hurt by your childishness." "You can't keep my children from me," Weasley shouted, pounding his fist on the table. "I don't want to, but I will if you force me. Do you think you can behave yourself for the sake of our children?" Hermione asked. "Do you? Can he? I don't want him around my daughters," Weasley retorted. "That's not your decision to make anymore. And for your information, we don't disparage either of you in front of Rose or Minerva," Hermione answered. "You're still my wife. You're my property," Weasley shouted. Draco saw red. He drew his wand and shot a stinging jinx at Weasley's chest. How he longed to crucio the man. "She's no one's property. I suggest you take the peace offering she's giving you, because if she decides that she doesn't want you around her daughters, she will have the Malfoy name and fortune at her disposal. I will help her make sure that you never catch so much as a glimpse of them again. and I will make sure that you are nothing more than a fading memory to them. So what is your daughter's love worth to you? Is it worth sacrificing your overinflated ego? Is it worth getting along with your ex-wife so that they can have a happy life that you are part of? Decide what they are worth to you. Fine, I agree. When can I see them? Weasley said sullenly. Rose comes to the Burrow on Sundays. If you're here, then you can see her, but she does not leave anywhere with you. After the stunt you pulled at school, she doesn't trust you, and neither do I. 1 day a week? That's not enough. And visitation supervised by my parents, that's low, Hermione, even for you. That's what you're getting right now. Take it or leave it. Fine. You need to earn my trust, and you need to earn Rose and Minerva's trust, provided you abide by our visitation agreement with Rose, and nothing happens. Then Minerva and Rose may visit you at your home during the Christmas break. I will need to know where that is. I won't force them to stay if they're unhappy. They will be able to call Tansy to come get them at any time if they are ready to leave. It's up to you to ensure that they don't need to. You will also not set up wards to keep Draco or me out. During the Christmas holiday break, Minerva and Rose will come over on the 23rd, 27th, 29th from 9 to 5. They will spend Christmas Eve and Christmas morning with me, and can spend Christmas Day with you and return by 6. We can discuss New Year's Eve and Day once everyone knows their plans. You may also see them again on the 2nd. I want to remind you that they are not obligated to stay with you during your visitation time. I won't have them miserable. Fine, Weasley replied miserably. No! They heard Rose scream. All the adults rushed to get outside. Draco lifted the visible hexes from Weasley so the children wouldn't see him like that. They all split up searching for Rose. Draco and Hermione found her and Albus lying on the ground in the mud behind the house. They ran over to them. Albus! Rose, what's wrong? What happened? Hermione asked, standing the children up and getting herself covered in mud in the process. They were mean to me, Rose sobbed. They said mean things and pulled my hair. Then they took Norbert and threw him in the mud. Then they shoved us down, and now I'm all dirty. Apparently the younger Brown children were as bratty as their elder brother. He spotted them running away from their hideout behind a shed. Shh, it's okay, darling. Are either of you hurt? Hermione soothed. No, but they ruined Norbert, Rose cried. Albus shook his head. We can clean Norbert. He'll be as good as new, Hermione said. Draco grabbed the muddy dragon and put him in his pocket. Tansy could clean him when they got home. Are you ready to go back inside? Hermione asked her daughter. Can we go home instead? Rose pleaded. Rose looked exhausted. She rubbed her eyes tiredly and looked about to burst into tears again. Yes, but we need to take Albus to Uncle Harry and Aunt Ginny and say goodbye to everyone. Will you carry me, Daddy? Rose pleaded, looking up at him and holding her arms up. Looking down at her with mud streaked down her face and hair with tears shining in her eyes. He realized that he would never be able to deny her anything. Merlin forbid she ever found out that he was wrapped around her little finger. Of course, Princess. I want to be carried too, Albus protested, also reaching up to be picked up. You're too heavy, Albus, Hermione said. Albus looked so disappointed not to be included and started to turn away to walk back to the house. Nonsense, Draco said. I can carry them both back to the house. Draco lifted both muddy children in his arms, and they walked back to the house. Draco cringed inwardly at how much mud covered them all. His jacket was covered on both sides. He had a feeling there was mud on his neck. A little hand touched his cheek, and he turned to look at Rose. Now there was mud on his cheek. You're pretty. Men aren't supposed to be pretty, Princess. They're handsome. And thank you. Little fingers touched his hair, and now there was mud in his hair. Your hair is soft, Rose said. Albus joined her in touching his hair. Why not? Draco embraced the fact that he was covered in mud and would need at least 3 showers before the mud was fully gone. He got to be the knight to his little princess, though, and it was worth being covered head to toe in mud. Hermione snickered beside him. We found them, Hermione shouted as they walked inside the house. Ginny and Harry were the first to find them. Harry took in Draco's appearance and struggled to suppress his laughter. What happened? Why are they all muddy? He asked. They're fine now. Just a little squabble with the other 3 delightful children, Hermione said. Harry took Albus from Draco. Draco smirked as Albus smacked his father's cheek, leaving a muddy handprint. Weasley chose that moment to walk in with Lavender, their 3 children, and Molly and Arthur. Did you go for a roll in the mud, Ferret? Weasley remarked snidely. No, your children were picking on Rose and Albus. We're leaving. Rose has had enough for today, Hermione replied. Draco set Rose down. Go say goodbye to everyone, he told her. Rose said goodbye and gave hugs to her grandparents and aunt and uncle, but refused to hug her father. She would only say goodbye grudgingly once she was safely standing between Hermione and Draco. I'll be right behind you, Draco said to Hermione as they turned to walk down the lawn. Draco turned and faced Weasley. You're not off to a good start, Weasel. I'd control your demon spawn if I were you. She's not going to put up with that type of behavior from them towards her girls. Keep calling me Ferret in front of the girls, too. See how long she's willing to put up with that. Bugger off, Ferret. Such a delightful conversationalist, Weasley. A very muddy Draco caught up with Hermione and Rose. He picked Rose back up, threw his other arm around Hermione, and kissed her before they separated from the burrow. Norbert was given into the care of Tansy when they arrived. House elf cleaning charms were always more effective than anything a witch or wizard could do. Hermione took Rose off to clean her up and put her down for a nap. Draco dropped a kiss on Hermione's forehead before disappearing into his own room. Draco lay on the couch in the study sipping scotch when Hermione walked in. Her damp locks were braided into pigtails and left damp marks in her shirt. The shirt was interesting. It was white with a red circle and a yellow lightning bolt over the circle. If he wasn't friendly with Harry, he would wonder why he couldn't seem to get away from lightning bolts. Well, I'm glad that's over, she said. Draco drew her down onto the couch so that she lay on top of him. She rested her cheek on his chest over the steady thump of his heart. Is Rose okay? Draco asked. He found a bit of exposed skin on her back where her shirt rode up. He stroked his fingers up and down the small of her back. She's fine now. Tansy brought Norbert to her just as I finished cleaning her up. She's taking a nap now. She called me Daddy, Draco said wonderingly. How does that make you feel? Hermione asked. Like someone told me I get to be a father again. Is that okay? He was elated about Rose claiming him as her father. He couldn't hide it from Hermione. He was a little anxious about how she would feel about it. If it makes you both happy, then I'm happy. I'm a little worried about her rejecting her father, though. And you know you're going to have to share her, right? Draco wrapped his arms around her and hugged her reassuringly. I think it might be understandable that she be wary around him right now. The last time she saw him, he was filling her head with lies and telling her she wasn't going to see her mother again. Other than that one instance, she hasn't been around him since September. She sees me every day. At her age, I don't think it's difficult to get confused. I'll share her, so long as Weasley behaves himself. You can't have too many people loving your kids and wanting the best for them. You do treat her like she's your daughter, Hermione said softly against his chest. I think of her as mine, Draco said. She didn't start out that way. She was your daughter, and that was enough for her to be special to me. But something changed for me, and she's mine now. They lay in silence for a while. Draco ran his hand down the ridges and planes of her back, enjoying the feel of her body on his. The smell of her shampoo mingled with the scent of her body wash. The soothing lavender and jasmine scent relaxing him further. Hermione, he said quietly. She asked. She raised her head a little sleepily and propped her chin on her hand to look at him. I'm curious about the spell you used on the weasel today. Did it work? Oh, I'm sure it did. Unless he says something to us, we may never know, though. How can you cast a spell and not want to find out if it worked or not? Very easily in this case, since finding out would mean to either try to talk to Ron about his sex life or attempt to have sex with him, and I find both prospects distasteful. Draco curled his lip in disgust. I see what you mean by not needing to know. You finally hexed his balls off like you've been promising to do. In a manner of speaking, yes. He won't be getting it up for some time to come. Draco roared with laughter. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Hermione giggled delightedly above him. You really are a delightfully devious witch.